Alright, so in this video I'm gonna show you how to do Excel automation using JavaScript and Node.js. So based on that, to be able to do this, you're gonna need Node.js installed, which you can find at nodejs.org. You can see I'm on the website right now. You will also need Visual Studio Code or really any text editor. If you don't have any preference, you can use Visual Studio Code. That will be fine. So let me show you what I have here. So I have this folder, and in this folder I have an Excel file. That's pretty much where I'm gonna start. This is that Excel file. So it's basically a file with two tabs. This is one tab with some information. There's a second tab called subtotal. That's the second tab. This is pretty much the data we'll be working with. Now, first, I'm gonna install Node.js. Now, this installation is available both on Mac or Windows systems. So whichever system you're on, just download and install. For me, I'm on a Mac, so I'm gonna click on this download for a Mac. I'll use the recommended version, but technically you could use current. Shouldn't be an issue. I'll go ahead and download that. And then pretty much like any installation, next. If you want to change some options, you can. So I'm gonna really scroll through this installation and get back when it's done. So done with this installation, go ahead and hit close, and I'm good with that. Again, if you're on Windows, just open Windows installation, run. It's pretty much the same experience, and very quickly that should be done. Now, the second piece of software you're gonna need for this is Visual Studio Code or any other text editor. I recommend using this if you don't have any preference. So there are different versions for different systems. I'm on a Mac, so I'll be using the Mac version. So again, you download, and that's gonna download this, and then you install. So yet again, I'm gonna really quickly run the installation and get back when this is done. So after you run your installation and open Visual Studio Code, we will just need to open the folder in Visual Studio Code. So this is that folder that had that Excel file in it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna drag it right in Visual Studio Code, and that will open that folder in Visual Studio Code. And that's pretty much where I am now. So X out of this. So now we have that Excel file here on the left. I don't really want to do anything with it, so that's just that file, and that's good to go. So in Visual Studio Code, if we go on top here, under View, we should have the option to use the integrated terminal here. So I'll click Terminal. That will open this. So with this, we should be able to create our Node project. Now, first, you probably want to make sure that Node was installed successfully. So if you just type Node in this command line and hit enter, that should give you this Node window. So if you get this pointer instead of getting like, this is not a recognized command or something like that, then you're fine. It was installed successfully. Now to get out of this, because we're now inside of our Node application, we're gonna do !exit. And if I hit enter, that should get me out of that application. So if you get here, that means your installation was successful for your Node and you're good to go. If you get some other message, you'll need to figure out why your Node installation didn't go through well. So now in our Node application, we're gonna run this command. So Node comes with a package manager. And for now, if you don't understand what package manager is, or you're not familiar with Node, just don't worry about it. So we'll just run an initial command to initialize a new application. So I'm going to run this command npm init and hit enter. And basically now it's gonna ask us what's the package name we're trying to create. This is just a name. You can really call it anything you want. So I'm just gonna leave it as default. Whatever it suggests is good enough for me. Just hit enter. version, hit enter. Description, you can write something. I'm just gonna hit enter. And entry point. So entry point is basically the first file that's gonna run, the main file. So we can leave it, see it says index.js. I'm gonna rename this and call it script.js. Hit enter, and test command, I'll just leave it as is. Repository, we're not gonna do it. Keyword, basically just enter until we're done. And then it's gonna ask, is this okay? I'm gonna say yes, hit enter, and that should create this file. So what it really does, it just creates this JSON file here with information about our applications. So mainly what we're concerned about, that this is our main app, the script.js, and that's what we're gonna be using to do our script. Now the script.js file doesn't exist, so I have to make it. So I'm gonna go here on the left panel and go here, click on this new file, the first plus button that's gonna create a file. I'm gonna type script.js. You wanna make sure you do the .js part to get it as a JavaScript file. I'm gonna hit enter, and that created that file, script.js, which is where I'm gonna write my Node application. Now we have our Visual Studio Code installed, we have our Node.js installed. Now another thing we're gonna need in addition to this is the package that's gonna let us interact with Excel files. And for that package, for this particular tutorial, I'm gonna use this one, see sheetjs.com. So that's their website. To get this installed, we need to run an install command, and this is right here. See, we have to do this command, npm install xlsx. So I'm gonna go to, again, my Visual Studio Code, and I'm gonna do here in the terminal, npm install xlsx. Hit enter, and that should just install the package. So now that that package is installed, we have everything we need installed. So the first thing we'll have to do, we'll have to take that script.js and import that package so we can use it. So I'm gonna start by running require command. I'll do require and then the name of the package, which is gonna be xlsx. All right, so I'm gonna use the old JavaScript version. So if you're familiar with newer language, you can use that too. But since most of the people who watch this channel are probably familiar with app scripts from Google Sheets, I'm gonna stick with the older JavaScript version here. So first I'm gonna create a variable. I'm gonna call it xlsx. I'm gonna make it equal to this. I know you can make it a constant, but again, as I said, I'm gonna use the old version. I start by requiring the package. So now the package is gonna be inside of this variable xlsx, and I should be able to use some methods and etc. out of it. So if I do xlsx dot, see, I'm gonna get some methods, one of which is read file. And that's what I want to do. I want to read that Excel file. And the file should be the file name as string. So if the file name is not in the same folder, you would have to do the full path to the file. In this case, this file is in the same folder as my script is. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use the name of the file. This is the name of the file. It's called Mac Pivot 2017.xlsx. And it should be the full name of the file. So again, I'm gonna save this in a variable. I'm gonna say var wb, I'll call it wb, I guess, for workbook, and that's gonna read that file into that variable. So now that we're able to read our workbook into this wb variable, we might want to just log some things out just to make sure this works. So I'm gonna start with doing a console log. So if you're coming from Google Sheet scripts, this is similar to logger log, and I'm gonna do WB, that's that workbook, and sheet names. And that should return an array of worksheets that are in that file. So let's try to run this and see how it goes. So I'm gonna first make sure I save this file, Control S, Command S, file save, whichever works. So once it's saved, I'm gonna run this. So this file is called script.js. So to run that file, I'm gonna go here in my terminal window. I'm gonna do node space and the name of that file. The file is called script.js. If I hit enter, see what I get is the returned array, and it gives me an array of 2 worksheets. One is called data, the other one is subtotal. And if you remember the file, this was our file. Data is the first tab, subtotal is the second tab. So that means we're successfully able to read the file and access it. So that gives us this workbook with worksheet names in it. So I'm gonna go on top here. I'm gonna do WB dot and I'll do sheets. And then we'll use the name of the worksheet we're trying to target. So let's say I want to target this second tab called subtotal. So I'm gonna go here and do subtotal in here, and then I'll save it in a variable. So this will be our worksheet. So I'll do var ws equals to this. Save. So that's our worksheet now. We opened our workbook. In that workbook, we're going to open our worksheet. Now in this worksheet, we can have different things. As you can see, it can have like columns, margins, etc. Let's just try to log it out and see what it looks like. So I'm going to do ws. That's our worksheet. I'm going to save and try to run this. So again, we'll go here, node space script.js, which is the name of the file. And I have to make sure I type that right. There it is. So that should bring us all the information about this worksheet. It gives us the margins in this worksheet. We have all these different cells in this worksheet. So if I keep scrolling up, there it is. So we have this reference that gives us the range A1 through F22. So if I go here, see that's A1 through F22, that's the range of data. And then basically it says in A1 cell, we have this text, whatever that text is, the value, that's the date. The V stands for value here, text date. And that's exactly what we got there. Now, if we keep scrolling down a little bit, let's try to find what's in that A2 cell, this date. So if I keep scrolling down a little bit, see A2, it will give you that the type of that cell is a number, N, and the value is 42133. That 42133 would be that cell in general formatting, which is that number. So I'm gonna undo that. So that's fine. So you might be okay with this. You might want to read your files and get them in this Excel date serial number format, or you might want to do JavaScript dates instead of doing this. So if you wanted to make sure that these are actual proper JavaScript dates, what you have to do when you do this read file, you have to pass it some options. So if I go here and do a comma, see the second one is like options that we can pass. And one of those options is this. So we can do a little object here. And in this object, we're going to pass our option. And that option is, if we go back to our documentation, there it is, read file. I'm going to scroll down. See this option, cell dates. So by default, it's false. So we're going to change it to true. So if I do this, I'm going to copy that, go back to this, and as an object, I'm going to say that should be true. And I have to write that correctly. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to rerun this again. I'm going to scroll down. Now, if you don't want to type this node space script JS every time, you can just hit up arrow key and that will just type the last command you did. So I'm going to hit run and that should run that. So now if we look at one of the dates, where is it? There it is. That will be a JavaScript date instead of being that Excel number. All right, so that's good. Now we're able to get our worksheet. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to read this worksheet data into an array. So I'm going to create an array of data. I'm going to call it data. And what do? You take that variable and there are multiple options you can do. And you can do it directly on this as a method. But what you can do this xlsx dot, and there are these utilities in there. And here we have this sheet2 methods. So we can convert it to a CSV. We can convert it to whatever these things are. And one of those is JSON, which is our JSON object. So I'm going to open this and then it's going to accept a worksheet. So the worksheet is that WS object. So let's log that out and see what we get. Save that and I'll go here up and enter to run that. And what we get is a JSON object. So now instead of getting that weird, see this B cell with all of its stuff, we converted it to a nice JSON object, and basically it's an array and each row is an object in this array, and so it goes. So basically it's an array of JSON objects. So now we can work with this. So let's say what I want to do, I want to calculate the difference between sales and cost and get the net. So I want to just calculate sales minus cost of goods and then calculate the net here. And then I want to get rid of sales and cost of goods columns, just have the net. So to do something like that, I'm going to go back here. Now this data is an array. So if we loop through that data array, so that's data is that array, and I'm going to map that array to get a new array of results. And that will go to a new variable. I'll call variable new data equals to this. And this map will accept a function, a callback function right here. And each time it's going to accept a record. So that record is going to be this object. And each time it's going to be one of those rows of our data. Now what I want to do in this object, I want to be able to first calculate sales minus cost of goods. So to do that, I'll go here and do record dot sales minus record dot cost. So that sales and cost are the names of those columns and they are case sensitive. So I have to make sure I type it right. And I'll save that in a variable. I'll call that variable net. So after I do that calculation, I'm going to save it in a variable net. And what I want to do, I want to assign that back to that record. So I'm going to say record, which is going to be that object. I'm going to call it a new column. I'll call it net. And I'll make that equal to that net, which is that. Now, I don't really have to do this 2 steps. Actually, let's just not do this. Let's just make it as a one-liner. So I'll just do this and not have that variable. So I'll just say the record net, which is a new property net record object, is going to be sales minus the cost. The next thing I want to do, I want to also delete sales and cost of goods out of it, if you remember. So I'm going to say delete record dot sales. And then I'll also delete record dot cost. So that should delete those properties from this object. And then I'm going to just return that record after all these modifications are done. At this point, hopefully this new data will be a new array with our information. So let's see what's in it. So I'm going to save this, go back here and arrow key up, run this. Take a look here. See, now I have the date, region, brand, state, and then it jumps to net. Sales and cost of goods are gone. We got our results. So now I want to put this in a spreadsheet. So I'm going to save this in a completely new file. So I'll do a variable, and that will be my new workbook. So the new workbook is going to be coming from that XLSX utilities again. There it is. So we're going to do a book new. So we're going to create a new workbook. Good. So that's going to be saved in this variable right here. So now that we have this, I don't need this console log. Let me actually just comment that utilities thing. So I'm going to do utilities, and in this utilities, there's going to be a way for us to add a new worksheet to our workbook. Let's see where it is. There it is, book append sheet. So, and that's going to accept a workbook. See, the workbook is going to be that new WB, that workbook. And then we can also have a worksheet that we need to pass to it, so which we don't have yet. So we need to create that. And then the third parameter is the name of the worksheet if we want to name it something. Now for me, I'm going to just call it new WS, which we don't have yet. And finally, I'm going to give this tab a name. I'll call it new data as the name of the tab. But the problem is we don't have this new WS yet. So we're going to have to make that. So I'm going to do variable. And to create that, again, we're going to go through this XLSX utilities. And in this utilities, there's going to be a way to convert JSON to a worksheet. See, there's this method JSON to sheet, and this was that JSON. So open parentheses, and it's going to accept our JSON. That's that. So now that we do that JSON array, that's going to create a worksheet out of this. And then we're going to pass that worksheet to this to add it to our existing workbook. So now finally we need to write that workbook to a file. So to do that, again, we'll go through this XLSX. But this time we're going to do write file. It's going to accept a workbook. And that workbook is going to be this, our new workbook, comma, and then the file name. So we can name this file. I'm going to call it new data file, and that will be XLSX. Semicolon, save. So now I'm going to run this. So we go here, arrow up, run this, and see that new file is created, new data file. And if I go to that folder, it should be there. If I open it, there it is. And that's our new file. So that's it. That should create our script. So we're able to read the file, do something with the data, and then output it to a completely new file. And that should be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.